In this video, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on how to use the phone application more efficiently on the AT&T Centro. A couple of things to note: we're going to use a few buttons extensively, and I wanted to point those out before we get started. The first one is the menu button, which is down on the bottom right side of the Centro next to the Alt key. We're also going to use the house button, or the application launcher. The application launcher is actually I call an overloaded button, because if you press and hold it, it'll actually list out for you the last or the most recently used applications on your Centro. We're also going to use the five-way navigator. You can move up, down, left, and right, and also select objects on the screen using the five-way navigator. And if you press and hold the center of the five-way navigator, it'll actually bring up the alerts dialog. So if you've ever tried to tap on that little ringing bell in the top left corner of your screen, you can also access it simply by pressing and holding the center of the five-way navigator. So let's get into looking at how you can more efficiently manage phone calls on your Centro. The first thing I'm going to do is make a phone call to my device from another phone. When the phone call comes in, you'll see on the screen that if that person's in your contact database, their name will appear above their phone number. And I have three options: answer, ignore, or ignore with text. Obviously, answer will allow you to answer the phone call. Ignore will send that phone call to voicemail. And then ignore with text will actually send the call to voicemail and then bring up your instant or your text messaging application on the Centro. If you've had a conversation with this person before, the threaded view will be there, as you can see on this example. And you can very easily go in and enter some quick text, maybe can't talk right now, and send that off to them. So within 2 or 3 taps, you can very easily send that person a message via SMS while continuing to do whatever you happen to be doing previously, whether it was on a phone call, in a meeting, or doing something else. So a real great way to manage the phone calls, to let someone have perspective on why it is you didn't take their phone call. The next thing we're going to take a look at is what we call add to contacts here. Add to contacts gives you the ability on an incoming call. So you'll notice in this phone call example, it says Pennsylvania, meaning the person's calling from Pennsylvania, but they're not someone that I have in my contact database. So what I'm going to do here is just answer the call, pretend to have a brief conversation with this person, and then upon hanging up, the device is going to actually prompt me to go ahead and add that person into my contact database. So we've talked for a couple seconds, I'll hang up, and now it'll allow me to add that person, since I didn't have them in my contacts, into my database. I can create a new contact or add it to an existing contact. And if this feature annoys you, you can actually just turn it off and say that it won't ask you or prompt you again. So let's say I want to add it to an existing contact. Let me add it to, let's say my friend here, Colin Smith. Just select Colin, use the five-way navigator, and select paste. And now it's going to add Colin Smith, and now add a mobile number in there for Colin Smith. So a nice quick example of how to use the Centro and the features of it to keep your contacts up to date as new people call you, or as people you know call you and they call you from different numbers. Another feature of the phone application that you'll see here is you'll notice a tabbed interface down at the bottom. You can access those tabs by simply tapping on the screen or by using the five-way navigator to move around. The left one is your dial pad. The next one is your phone favorites. The next one over is just the main phone screen. Next one is your contacts, and then the last one is the call log. You'll notice that that last phone number that came in was not recognized. Now the next time they call, that will be switched over to Colin Smith, because the phone will recognize that. But here's one down here in the call log that it's just a phone number. It's not associated with a name, because that phone number is not in a contact record in the database on the device. If I press the menu key, it will then allow me to add the contact in the same fashion as it did on a phone call when I ended it. So I can make a new one, I can add it to an existing one. I'm just going to cancel, because I think you get the point there. But the call log is very valuable because it gives you the last 1,000 phone calls that came into your Centro, or that you placed from your Centro, or that you missed. And you'll notice the different arrows, green being a call that came in, yellow being a call that goes out. And you'll notice there's 2 different colors of green arrows. The top one here is a dark green, which indicates it's a phone call that you accepted, and the light green one is indicating that a phone call that you missed or dismissed purposefully. So those are just a few tips on how to manage calls. There's also a couple different things that you can set up as far as preferences within the phone application. If you press the menu button again and go over to options, in there are there's some options there that you can set for the phone. So let's go into, let's say, the dial preferences. You'll notice here on my device that I have the dialing prefix set up. So in the Philadelphia area, you have to dial 215 before any phone number that you call, or 267. Predominantly, it's 215. So I've set this up here to automatically dial 215 anytime I dial in a 7-digit number. So in other words, if I'm over here and I just want to dial away and dial 555-1212, you'll notice that when I press the green phone button, it's automatically going to append that 215 to the front so that I can simplify my dialing. Pretty handy feature. Another preference that you can set when you're at this main phone screen is when you press menu and go to options, you can also set the phone display options. One thing you can do is enable the calendar event to show, so your next calendar event will show on the front screen. You can also change how the phone will by default behave on that screen. By default, when you start dialing, when you start typing, it actually dials a phone number. But you can also set your device so that when you start typing, it starts a contact search. So you'll notice, so let me just tap OK here. When I start typing, let's say I start typing the number 8, okay, that the letter C and the number 8 are both presented at the top of the screen. That's because that key on the keyboard is associated with both those characters. If I were to now type in the letter S, which is not associated with a number, it will give up on trying to put a number in and look for contacts that begin first name C, last name S. And it's the most efficient way to actually search on a Centro is to search by the first initial of the first name and then the first initial and the rest of the last name. So if I had a large contact database, this would have just filtered out all my contacts by first initial and last name. So nice way to very efficiently dial phone calls from the Centro. One final preference that's available that we're going to talk about here is the sounds. So everybody wants to change their ringtone. One thing that I like to do, because I'm never quite sure if I'm going to hear the ringtone, is to actually set my phone to vibrate no matter whether I have the ringer switch on or off. And I can do that in the sound preferences. In sound preferences, up near the top there, under application ringtones, that means when my phone rings, I'm actually going to have it vibrate always. And that means no matter whether I have the ringer silent switch on or off, it's always going to vibrate. There's always those situations I find where my phone is in my pocket and I don't hear the ringer, but I do feel it in vibrate mode. So that'll give me the ability now, no matter what the environment, to make sure I'm answering those phone calls. So these are just some tips and tricks for using the phone application. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something today. Have a great day.